Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Santos on Sports. So much to talk about in the world of sports. Oh my goodness, we're going to try to get this all in 1 hour alongside my good friend and colleague, Mr. Chris Santos. I am Paul Santos. We'd like to thank our sponsors to start off with Scotty's Pub, 202 Pleasant Street in Fall River, Citywide Glass with locations in New Bedford, Dartmouth, Fall River, and Taunton, Lakeville Athletic Club, 325 Bedford Street in Lakeville, and John Seed, Attorney at Law, 156 8th Street in New Bedford. You can check them out at johnseedlaw.com. So how are we doing, Chris?
Hey, Paul, it's Celtics, it's Patriots, it's free agent frenzy, it's Bruins. There's a lot going on out here right now. Good time to be a sports fan. And coming down the stretch with two teams, obviously the Bruins and the Celtics. But free agency seems to be at the top of their list because these last 3 days have been really interesting to see where guys are shifting and where they're going. And none more than number 12 leaving Green Bay to wear retired number 12 out of the New York Jets. Because it looks like Aaron Rodgers spoke to Joe Willie Namath and said, "I'm coming after your jersey." And Joe Will Namath said, "You can have it." So it looks like the Rodgers is going to be a New York Jet.
And that goes right to the question, to the heart of the question that we have here today on Santos on Sports. And the question is, where are the Patriots going to finish up? I know it's early. We still got a little ways to go. But as of right now, with the rosters the way they are right now, where do you think the Patriots are going to finish in their division? All right. I'm going to answer that right now, Chris. Are you ready?
Yep.
Last place. That's where they're going to finish, in the cellar. They're going to be in the cellar looking up at everybody. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets and you got to play Josh Allen twice and you got to play Miami twice, and you can't seem to be even when Brady was there, it is going to be, get ready, Patriots. You haven't seen this in a long time. Last place.
Well, again, the season still young. A lot more things are going to happen. The draft is around the corner. But moves have been made by New York, by Miami, to bolster their roster. Obviously, none bigger than Aaron Rodgers. But even seeing Miami doing the things that they're doing, going out and get a Jalen Ramsey to bolster that secondary, to go against Aaron Rodgers, to go against Josh Allen. Pretty impressive move there to have him on one side, Howard on the other side. That really helps Miami, I think. They went out and get Braxton Burrows, special teams guy, punt returner, kick returner, a speedy guy, a slot receiver, can really help Miami as well. So they're making moves. Obviously, the Jets, no bigger than the piece of the puzzle, getting the quarterback that they think that can lead them to the playoffs. Bills really haven't done anything, but yet again, they may not have to. They feel kind of secure in what they have. They'll be looking to get the draft. Same thing with the Patriots. They start off with Juju Smith-Schuster, now coming with them. They picked up James Robinson. So you go wide receiver, you go running back. Now let's see what happens into the draft, whether it's offensive line or another wide receiver. Is Juju your number one? Is he your number two? How comfortable do you feel Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, and Thornton as your receivers right now? So still got a little ways to go, Paul, but I know you got them last. Let's see what other people think. Call us at 774-762-6234. Do you agree with Paul and say they will be in last in the AFC East?
Well, I've heard pundits talk about, the draft coming up, right? I'm thinking about free agency. In fact, we're going to talk about it because, Lamar is out there, and you wonder if, the Patriots really could go get somebody like that, move on from Mac Jones. You say, well, Mac Jones, we all know what happened last year. They stuck him with, some weaknesses there, an offensive coordinator, not a lot of experience. They got O'Brien coming in this year. That could change things around. But, you talk about the draft. I was actually chuckling as you were talking there.
Because think about some of these drafts, right? This has not been the Patriots' strong suit over here. Cole Strange, I mean, come on now. N'Keal Harry, come on. So what kind of confidence can we have? Like, well, let's see what happens in the draft. Let's see what happened in the draft. When was the last time they got a stud in the draft? You know, they always blow the draft most of the time in the first round. I mean, they build deep in the drafts have been pretty good, but that's for 2-3 years from now. As far as it helping this year, I don't really have a lot of confidence in that.
Well, they picked 14th. So knowing that, I've seen Bill go in 14th and a little bit later and trade that pick and get depth later on and say, hey, I can go get this, this, and this. Or do you take a chance like when he went with Harry and it didn't work out and think about the guys he missed on and went with Harry instead, and what these other wide receivers, DK Metcalf, has been doing that Bill missed out on. So that was one player right there that comes to mind. So, yeah, it hasn't been a great draft on specific top positions, but Bill has done some decent ones later in picks at defensive back and some other linebackers and other positions that have helped them, obviously, during the year. So, number 14, it's a good spot, Paul, to go out and get somebody that can, play right from the beginning, and hopefully he's got somebody in mind.
It does seem like the rules of the game over the years really benefit the offense. I mean, they used to have these shutdown defenses. I think you have to have a good defense. You have to be able to stop people in the clutch and things like that. So that is true. But the rules are very, very tough on the defense. And it really has become a quarterback-oriented league. I mean, quarterback can't do it alone. But obviously, if you have a great quarterback and surround them with the right talent, that can really move a team up the ranks. Now, you take a look at Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, right? He's got some,
right,
some people there with him, right? So instantly, they become something different than they were before, okay? And a lot of these quarterbacks moving around, that can be the case. But what about the Patriots, right? Lamar Jackson floating around out there. It doesn't feel like they're going to make a bid for him. I know there's a lot of disagreement between Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. They really didn't give the kid a chance and all that last year. I know. But with the league the way it is, right? Why not go for one of those elite quarterbacks? I mean, imagine if they get Lamar Jackson. Now you got Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Aaron Rodgers all in the same division. You actually become, possibly somebody that can compete with that. But the way that it is right now, unless there's a major turnaround in Mac Jones in year 3, but now he's got the new offensive coordinator and all that, I mean, why not go for a guy like Jackson?
Well, I'm curious that why has 31 other teams not even attempted to go get Lamar Jackson? I want to know what that's all about. Is that a contract issue that they're not willing to pay him, or maybe the injuries are worse than what they are, or they don't like his attitude? It could be a multiple kind of thing to coaching staffs and organizations to say, this is not the direction that we want to go. So I'm not really sure on that. Even the Jets, they could have made a move, and they weren't sure if Aaron Rodgers was going to come over. So Lamar's been sitting there for a few days, and no one's knocking on his door saying, hey, we're really looking at you. What can you give us? So it's not just the Patriots, it's the NFL. And whether he fits their style of play, can he adapt to Bill? And, to me, Lamar's a runner first and a thrower second. And I know they've had Cam Newton, and they had him in that kind of situation. So they could be comfortable with that because they run an offense like that. But right now, no one's knocking on his door.
774-762-6234. What do you think? Are the Patriots going to end up in the cellar for the first time in a long time? I got to tell you, I have mixed feelings, too, about Lamar Jackson. Tends to get hurt. He runs the ball first. He is sort of like in that, Cam Newton style. Even Hurts a little bit, although Hurts can throw the ball. The question always is Lamar Jackson, can he throw the ball? If he can throw the ball successfully and combine that with, he can run for the first down on third down, that's fine. But the problem with him, I'm looking at him, and he gets hurt all the time because of the style that he plays. You know what I mean? And if you try to tell him, well, maybe you shouldn't run in this situation or something like that, the way the league is now, I mean, Josh Allen will run for that first down, right? Mahomes will run for that first down, although they're a little bit more, conservative about taking the hits. But I don't know, Lamar seems to be like you said, he runs first and throws second, and that's not really the Patriots style over the last 20 years for sure.
And it's not really really a winning style right now in the NFL. Not to say that it can't be down the road, but it hasn't been that way. It's been more of a pocket passer who's done a pretty good job of winning Super Bowls. Now, everyone says, well, Mahomes, wait a minute. Mahomes, did a lot of running, and he kind of banged himself up, and he's transformed himself into a nice pocket passer and willing to take off when have to. But I think he's a better thrower than Lamar Jackson is. And I think that's where his weakness is and needs to work on it to be better being a pocket passer. So right now it may not fit them or anybody else. I just don't know. And I look at like a Josh Fields for the Chicago Bears. Here's another guy that guys are saying if he gets weapons, he can be a Mahomes and be a thrower first and a runner second. I'm curious to see if he can adapt to it when he's getting some weapons now. They went out and got more from Carolina and gave up the first round pick at number 1. They still have the player from Pittsburgh, that Claypool that they got over. And they're trying to help Fields and saying, hey, listen, we don't want you to run and hurt yourself. Run when you need to run to get that important first down and be able to throw the ball. And we're going to protect you. So I don't know if Lamar can do it.
All right, what do you think? Are the Patriots going to end up in last place in the AFC East? 774-762-6234. Okay, let's go to Nelson in Fall River. You're on Santos on Sports.
Hello, gentlemen.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Doing great. And since today is Austin 316, just like Stone Cold Steve Austin once said, oh, hell yes, they're going to finish last.
All right, that's 2 votes now for finishing last there, Chris.
And Nelson, why do you think that? What are you seeing? Are you seeing that Miami's making more moves? The Jets just made a move. What are you thinking about? Will the Patriots stay calm in the draft? Why are you thinking last?
Well, right now, New England is in the rebuilding phase. You know, they're in the rebuilding phase. They got to sort out the pieces. Belichick has his homework cut out for them. I think it's going to be a little while before they get into the groove, but for right now, I don't see the Pats making it. Then I could be wrong, you know. They could make a run, but I think once they have the foundation down and actually move past, you know, Tom Brady officially, then we'll see how it goes from there.
I got to tell you, Nelson, I don't know about you. I mean, Chris, we always joke around how, you know, us Patriot fans are a little on the spoiled side. I guess just a little bit there,
Yes.
Chris. And I think we have been spoiled. But you know, after Tom Brady left, we really thought, you know, Belichick is the greatest coach of all time and all this stuff.
Yeah.
He had that god-awful year with Cam Newton. I don't know what he was thinking there. He waited until there were quarterbacks floating around there. He waited until the last guy on the scrap heap, you know, throws him in there. Then they draft Mac Jones, and now that's not working as well as we thought. I'm disappointed. I thought that he was in a few years, and again, I guess was spoiled. I thought in a few years he was going to be able to make this team a contender once you got 3-4 years past Brady. And they're not. They're not really a Super Bowl. I mean, winning the Super Bowl is a really a tall order. But just to be a team that, you know, has a chance to be competitive and has a chance to win. This team has no chance to win.
Yeah, and I thought for a little while, or for a little bit, because he already signed with Las Vegas, I was possibly thinking that Garoppolo would come back to New England, but that didn't happen that way. So, yeah, so I think it's going to be a while for the Pats Nation. Yes, you guys have been very spoiled, but now the real work begins. And the last thing I'll say is the Masters is coming up. This is a different sport, golf.
Yep.
I am going with Scotty Scheffler. He is on fire.
I 100% agree.
And I think he's gonna be sticking around for a long time.
All right, we're going to get Chris's thoughts on the Masters, but before you go, you said you Patriot fans have been spoiled. You're not part of Patriots Nation.
Hell no.
What's
But
your team?
I will say this: I respect Belichick. He is a genius. I respect Brady, one of the greatest of all time. Well, I'll say almost the greatest quarterback of all time. I just like sticking it to New England teams. I don't know. That's just me. I get a kick out of it.
Now, what's your team in football?
Well, I like the New York teams. Obviously, I'm from New York.
Okay,
Aaron
all right.
Rodgers is coming to the Jets. We'll see how that goes.
Oh man, so you must have enjoyed it when the Giants beat the Patriots in those 2 Super Bowls, huh?
Oh yes. You know, Eli Manning, he will hang those 2 wins over Brady's head, and then those 2 wins sting still to this day.
Well, you know, I'm a Patriots fan, but you know, there's a lot of Patriots fans out there. They're a little annoying. So I would say to them, you know, who's the greatest of all time? They say Brady. I said, no, Eli Manning is the greatest of all time. They're like, what? Yeah, he's 2-0 against the greatest of all time. So he must be the greatest of all time. Anyway,
Yes.
Hey Nelson,
Yes,
thanks a lot for your call. We appreciate it. Call again.
Have a good day, guys.
All right,
thank
Nelson from Fall River. So you want to talk a little golf there? We haven't done that. I know I don't follow it that much, although I like to watch the Masters. And there was a tournament on I was watching when I was in Florida. What was that, the Players?
That's correct.
Yeah, and you know, there was a couple of shots like the guy hacked one out of the woods and it went in the hole or something like that. A couple of good shots there. But as far as the Masters, what did you think about his prediction?
Well, he's going with a player who, in the last year, as he said, has been on fire, and Scotty Scheffler has been the guy to beat. And so you would have to think probably him and John Rahm would be the 2 guys that would be the favorites going into the Masters, no doubt about it. So if those 2 were to meet down the stretch, that would be some fun. Unfortunately for Rahm, in the last tournament, had to get out. He had a stomach virus, and so he was in the tournament but didn't finish and had to leave after I believe the first or second round. So he wasn't able to play. Hopefully he'll be back for the Masters. Obviously, there's a lot of great players who like that course and will do well there. But those 2 are the top 2 right now to say if you have to have 2 favorites, those would be the 2 for the Masters.
You know, I'm going back in history a little bit because, you know, my intellectual side, I do have one. I like to watch 60 Minutes, you know.
Yep.
So one night, I don't know how many years ago, it was probably 10 years ago now, I put on 60 Minutes and the Masters was running late. And Bubba Watson comes up and the ball was like in the woods and he hit this hook shot, right? You remember this? Where right, probably people that follow golf remember this. He hooks this ball all the way around, drops it in there, and ends up coming back and winning the thing. And I thought, wow, this is great. I really enjoyed it. And I don't really follow golf. Now, what was that? That had to be, 10 years ago or something?
Yeah, I would say around then.
Yeah.
Probably around that. Yep.
Yeah.
And,
so it can be exciting, you know. And that whole thing about putting the green jacket on and all that. You got to earn that green jacket. You got to earn that jacket, you know.
well, that tournament is obviously a very special one. And a lot of people love to see that. I've never been there personally. I know some friends who have been there. A very hilly course, a lot of ups and downs, so very tough to walk, according to the people I've talked to. So you got to find yourself a good spot and kind of watch them and see how it goes. But I would say those 2 are the favorites, the odds on. And Paul, if you're a betting man, you know, sports gambling now legal in Massachusetts, you can go out there and maybe get a little Nelson insight and put a little something on Scotty Scheffler.
All right. Well, I got 2 votes that this guy is the guy to watch. So maybe we're onto something there. Okay. So the question, though, I want to get back to that question. Will the Patriots finish in last place this year? 774-218-33. Excuse me. I'm giving you the wrong number. 774-762-6234. It's right on the screen there. And Nelson from Fall River seemed to think that, yeah, we're going to have some growing pains here, probably last place. But I wanted to ask Chris, right? Jacoby Myers, right? The go-to guy. I mean, if you're going to keep Mac Jones, right? Jacoby Myers, a lot of people say, well, if he was on another team, he'd be the number 2, number 3 guy. But you know what? It just seemed like when you needed a first down on third down, and you needed that slot receiver and you that little quick pass over the middle, he could run the route, he could get open. He was kind of clutch in terms of you hit him when you need him. He was the go-to guy for Mac Jones. If you're going to have Mac Jones there, why not keep Jacoby? And it turns out that he wasn't really demanding, you know, this big, you know, pile of gold. The contract was, you know, decent, but it wasn't like through the roof. Certainly the Patriots could have done it. No, they let him go and they bring in Juju Smith-Schuster, who is a little bit older. I mean, he's a good player and everything, but what do you think about that? Should they have done more to keep Myers there, given the fact that he was kind of the go-to guy for Mac Jones?
That depends on what you feel that you're getting out of Juju Smith-Schuster, which, Paul, I believe, is the same contract as Myers. 3 years, $33 million. He has it now in the Raiders, and Juju has it with the Patriots. So it's the same. So it's going to be nice to see at the end of next year who's got more receptions, who's got more yardage, and who's got more TDs. And let's see who made the right move.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see. And it's kind of funny because now you've got Jacoby Myers with Josh McDaniels, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like, okay, a little return home over there. And,
Jimmy G.
The caller also mentioned Garoppolo. So now there's a little bit of a reunion over there. And if you look at the season, right, I know McDaniels, he was open to a lot of criticism because the season didn't go that well. But if you look at a lot of those games, they were right there. They were right there, and they tended to blow the games at the end. Now, of course, the difference between being a winning team and a losing team at the level of the NFL, a lot of people can say it's this much right here. But I don't know. I think those additions, I think he's better than Carr as long as he can stay on the field. And with some of these other additions and maybe the second year now with Coach McDaniels, I don't know. They're in a tough division and all that, but I don't know. I think the Raiders can be dangerous. And I think the Patriots might even be playing them again, if I'm not mistaken.
If you're Myers, Paul, you now have Devontae Adams, your number one. Hunter Renfrow, who's pretty good. They still have Josh Jacobs, a franchise tag on him as your running back, who's pretty good. At the time they signed Myers, they had Darren Waller, who is a very good tight end when he's healthy, but then they got rid of him and he went to the Giants. So think of that as Devontae, now Renfrow, and Myers as your three receivers. That takes pressure off Myers where, hey, I don't have to be the number one guy. They got Adams. And so maybe that can help me a little bit more with this team. So interesting to see Myers and even Garoppolo and maybe some other guys flocking to McDaniels more than flocking back to Bill or, in the New England Patriots. So that's quite interesting as well.
Got to wonder about Kendrick Bourne. We always felt that they didn't use him as much as they could. And when they did use him, they usually did pretty well, right? He got in the doghouse. I don't know what happened with him. They really weren't using him. So I was thinking, all right, let's see who's left. I mean, you still got Hunter Henry. They got rid of Jonnu Smith, which that never worked out. But you still have Hunter Henry, who, there's another guy that didn't seem to get the ball all that much. So maybe Kendrick Bourne steps up, and maybe, they can find another way, to get those big first downs when they need them.
Well, let's start with, Jonas Smith. I mean, we talked about this, Paul, all the money that they took during that time in that free agency, and you said who they're going to go get. Well, these were some of the guys they went get. And Smith ends up, unfortunately, being a bust for them and not working out. So you take that, and now what am I going to do with this money? And where am I going to move it around? And so that's where you think about free agency for this year and say, okay, where do we go next? So right now it's only been Juju and Robinson, who they got from the Jets, a running back to a big kind of type running back. So that should be interesting to see what his role is. And then what moves forward in, again, the end of free agency and then your draft picks, because there has to be somebody in there to start. Now, with Bourne, with what has happened, Paul, is he still in the doghouse? Why is he still there? Did they not try to attempt to trade him? Do they want to say, okay, we're going to bypass last year? All that's what's happened. We're going to give you a fresh start. It's you, Juju, Devontae, whatever we bring in, Thornton, another young guy going to be in his second year, and just open up to him and say, well, last year it's our way or the highway. So you better get your attitude and start playing New England Patriot football. Yet to be seen.
Absolutely, because I can just remember it just seemed like he, I don't know, when they really needed something. Obviously it was, it was Jacoby Myers too. But I remember a game I went to in person and just watching on television, I'm thinking, wow, this Bourne, and then there were a lot of times where he didn't get that many catches. They didn't even try to throw the ball to him, But when they did, a lot of times he came through with a big play. And even Thornton, hey, when Zappi was in there, a couple of touchdown passes there.
Yep.
I don't know. They do have talent there to be competitive. I don't think they're going to get blown out in a lot of these games. But to beat some of the, now you got to get through Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. haven't had any luck with Miami, just the division alone. And then they're going to play your Dallas Cowboys, right? That's going to be a tough game. And they're going to play the AFC West, I believe. I know they're going to play Kansas City. So, gee, they don't seem to have a lot of weak sisters on the schedule there.
And so now that makes you think, not only do I have to score, but how do I stop Allen? How do I stop Rodgers? How do I slow down Tyreek Hill? Things like that on the other teams that make them, better. How do I score against Miami? Now that they got Ramsey on one side, Howard on the other. So you gotta look into all those factors. Never mind, you're gonna have to play the Raiders, KC, the Chargers. Some good teams. You can throw in Dallas, who's been competitive. So you have to look at what's best for you, what really works, and how do we protect. If Mac Jones is the guy that you're going with, how do we protect him and make our offense better?
I'm glad you mentioned Mac Jones because I want to talk about him in just a moment. Again, give us a shout if you're out there. Jump in the conversation. We love to hear from you at 774-762-6234. You can start with a question, but you can talk about anything having to do with sports. The question at the moment is where the Patriots going to finish up. Well, I heard a clip of an interview that Devin McCourty gave. Now, Devin McCourty, of course, he just retired.
Right.
But before that, he would come on the radio, and he was a very affable guy, and he was mostly on WEEI. And, of course, he was a little guarded because he was still on the team. Well, now that he's retired, he cut loose a little bit, and he let, some stuff come out very politely, of course, because he's a class guy. But the long and the short of it is that during the season, that whole thing when Mac Jones got injured and then Zappe went in there and then Mac Jones came back, there was a divided locker room that some of the people in the locker room were like, hey, well, maybe we should stick with Zappe. No, I'm a Mac Jones guy. Well, yeah, then Mac Jones come out. No, maybe we should go back to Zappe. And they're going back and forth. And then there became this disconnect, between Belichick and Mac Jones. And there was also, and we already knew this, the offense never really got in sync. That whole thing with, bringing in Patricia and Judge and all that we already knew that didn't work. But that whole thing where behind the scenes things were a little bit more dysfunctional that we're used to in Patriots Nation. And, I thought that was fascinating.
Well, it's a different because, again, not using the word spoiled, but what you've been through with TB12 and all the time that he's been there, and everything has been right in focus, right in sync, and everything has worked out very well. Now, things got a little bit different. You got a new quarterback. You're trying to figure out what's good for him, what's not good for him, different personnel. So as the caller said, is it rebuilding? Okay, you made the playoffs. Remember, you still made the playoffs with Mac in that one game. And so you're still trying to rebuild in certain spots to continue to help this young man not become TB12, but because no one will be. But at the same time, get that we're on the same page, the same personnel, the same coaching staff, from Bill to offensive coordinator to quarterbacks coach, and everybody's on the same page. Communication, very, very important, Paul. And because it only takes 30 seconds to get in a play. And when you're not on the same page, that looks not embarrassing, but not what people really want to see. And then it comes out in the open, and Mac showed us his kind of energy, whether it's positive or negative, on the field this last year.
It's interesting because that whole thing, too, about the locker room and the way people felt about different decisions that were being made and the confidence in the offensive scheme. Apparently, there was a lack of confidence in the offensive scheme. And even though, you're a player and you're playing for Belichick, and you look and say, what? Belichick, he's supposed to be the greatest coach of all time. What's he doing with these guys? We can't seem to get on the same page. We can't score points. What's going on here? And then once you have that sort of like cancer enter a locker room, I know you've been around sports a long time, you start questioning like what we're doing and the coaching staff and all that. Things in the locker room can fall apart relatively quickly. I mean, they kept the cap on it for the most part, but you got to wonder what was going on behind the scenes. If people were saying, what are we doing? I don't understand this. I don't know what's going on here. And that can cause a lot of problems.
Well, we've seen it with the Boston Bruins, and we saw that with the Brusque situation when he had it last year. We saw it when Krejci did not want to come back. Bergeron was thinking about retiring. a lot going on. They made changes. It's a happier atmosphere in that locker room, and look what they're doing. Now, it's not to say that the Patriots can't improve this and make this team better and get that in situation to help out Mac Jones, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft, or whether it's just finding a way to get better and get into the playoffs as another year goes by with a new offensive coordinator and another year under your belt. So let's see how it develops in front. But yes, I think a locker room is very important where everyone is on the same page.
All right, what do you think? 774-762-6234. When we got that call from Nelson in Fall River, he mentioned the fact that he has a lot of joy rooting against the Boston teams. He finds that, fulfilling for some reason. I guess he chuckles a little bit. So, like when he's watching like a Celtics game and, once again, we had, boy coming down there with the last shot, goes in, blows the last shot again. Okay, whatever, that's fine. Still a great player, and so on and so forth. They got Marcus Smart throwing himself on the floor, and that whole thing. They needed to have a foul. It was one game where they needed to foul. And he was looking around. He wanted somebody else to foul because he knew that his next foul was going to put him out of the game. He didn't want to come out of the game. So he's like trying to wave somebody, hey, foul this guy. I don't want to be out of the game. Just stuff like that, and even Mazzulo was, I don't know, he's becoming a little irritating. Okay. And then the Bruins, they're cruising along with that bus, man. That Bruins bus is just cruising along. And now, hey, are they running out of gas a little bit? I mean, Allmark, that last game, for the first time, he was giving up some softies. Now look, we got plenty of time. They got a great team. They got depth. I have confidence that they should be able to go on a roll. But both the Bruins and the Celtics, Nelson and Fall River must be sitting back and going, oh, I can't wait for the bottom to fall off in the playoffs with these teams because, expectations are high, right? You're looking at the Celtics. They got to the finals last year. We're so close to going over the hump. The Bruins, of course, got to that Game 7 in 2019, and we can't live that down with that last game against St. Louis. And now you got these teams. It's almost like if one of these teams doesn't win the championship, it's like a disappointment. I mean, think about that, how high that bar is. I mean, they could go 3 rounds in and lose the 7th game against the Tampa Bay, or the Celtics can go to the 7th game against Milwaukee and come up short. That doesn't mean they're choke artists. There's some tough teams out there. And, I think that, this idea that championship or nothing, hey, you want them to win the championship. I'm rooting for them to win the championship, but doesn't mean they're choke artists if they don't make it all the way to the end either,
No, I agree. I'm a little more concerned of the Celtics than I am the Bruins. Celtics 6-5 since the All-Star break, while the Bruins are 12-4 since their All-Star break. So a little more concerning with the Celtics, especially I don't like losing to teams who are at the bottom of the cellar. And the other day losing to Houston takes a little bite out of me, Paul, because that's telling me there's no energy there. Because I know you can lose to anyone on any given day. I understand that. But good teams can find a way to win those games. It doesn't have to be pretty, but you find a way to win those games. And losing that one and some of the other ones, and I know guys are resting. Tatum's been out. Brown's had his turn. Horford, Brogdon, they've taken cycles around. You play a lot of games, some injuries, whether it's hamstrings, calves, a lot of things happen. But I'm a little more concerned about the way the Celtics have been playing compared to the way the Bruins have. So let's hope down the stretch in these last couple of weeks they finish off and, they're healthy going into the playoffs and see if they can make a long run for both of them.
Yeah, that would be nice. That's what we're rooting for here as we get into the spring. And I got to tell you, I was telling my wife, I said, if the Celtics and the Bruins both go on a run, there's going to be a game every night. It's going to be one night's going to be the Bruins, next night's going to be Celtics. Next going to be Bruins, next going to be Celtics. It's like, I don't want to be looking at any Bachelorette or any of this other nonsense. You're gonna have to make it through the next couple of months. But anyway, give us a shout 774-762-6234 for Santos on Sports. Type in a comment. We'd be glad to hear from you on this Thursday night here up here in New England. And of course, the fans here in New England, as Chris said, a little on the spoil side. But I'm looking at the Bruins and the Celtics, and I know people will say, they're more concerned about the Celtics than the Bruins. But here's the thing about hockey versus basketball, right? Basketball, the more talented team wins almost like, I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out there, 80 to 90% of the time, unless there's some kind of dysfunction, the team with the best talent wins. That's because you got high numbers of points. It's 100 points to 90 points, whatever. Hockey, right? You get into a 2-1 game and a 3-2 game. Games are decided on shots that like hit something on the way through. So there's more like unfairness to a hockey game in some respects, because, and then the game becomes much more tight checking. It happened one day when the Bruins played Seattle, and they're looking at this game like, wow, this game's like they're smothering us here. Even the Edmonton game had this sort of like, they shut down, the 50-goal scorer there, Connor McDavid. And, I went to see Connor McDavid. I'm like, you didn't even notice he was there because the Bruins went out of their way to shut him down. So unlike football, like a really good tight checking, smothering team in the NHL can all of a sudden take Pastrnak, McDavid, all these big scorers. You could almost take them out of their game. And I just think hockey is a much, much different game in terms of sort of that luck factor than basketball is. And that's what worries me about the Bruins.
And what worries me with the Celtics too, that's what I want to see, what Boston did against Connor McDavid. I want to see the Celtics do a lot better of. And when the Celtics were playing well, Paul, their defense was playing well. And they were clamping down, and they were making it difficult for you to score. And I haven't seen that since the All-Star break too, where, some teams are just shooting threes and just seems to be reining them in. And that 3-point shot percentage, which Missoula thinks is the most important stat in the NBA right now. So if that's true, then let's find a way to clamp down on that. But that's why the Boston Bruins went out and got Orlov, Hathaway, and guys like that, because they know what it's going to be like in that playoff time, how rugged, how tough it really is in playoffs to get through those series, and they're going to need it come that time. And I think that's why they did the right thing there and getting those type of players that were available. So I like the moves by Sweeney and Neely, and hopefully for the Bruins, it can last them all the way to the cup.
Yeah, the other thing that bothers me a little bit about hockey is, that playoff format. It just happens that in the Eastern Conference is where most of the tough teams are. There's like 3 or 4 in the West, but the Bruins go out there, they possibly win the President's Trophy, they possibly have the best record in the entire league, and then they could get the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round. You're Pittsburgh Penguins, right? So now all of a sudden you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, they should beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. But, let's say their goalie gets hot. You still got, Malkin and Crosby and some really great players there. Let's say that, our goalie gives up a softie here or there, all of a sudden, oh, gee, we're in a 7-game series against Pittsburgh. Anything can happen, It's not like they have to play anybody weak on the way through. I mean, you're going to get Tampa Bay probably. There's just teams in the East that are tough. And I'm not saying, hey, to be the champion, you have to beat the best. There's no question about it. But I don't know, the Eastern Conference is tough, and that worries me in some of those early rounds,
It can, and sometimes you press in those situations, and, the intensity gets high. And the next thing you know, as you said, a soft goal went in, or, Crosby might get on a roll, and he just happens to have 2 or 3 games where he's unstoppable and everything's bouncing his way. So, those things happen. And you just got to try to withstand the challenge. And like you said, you get through the teams. You're going to have to play them sooner or later, whether it's Toronto, the Islanders, Tampa, Pittsburgh. You just wait and see, and then you try to make a game plan and root for the best. But can that season, Paul, of what has been such a great season for the Boston Bruins, and you get such that high. I like the mentality of Boston saying, yeah, that's great, but that's not what we're looking for. We get this, awesome, but we want the cup. So I like the mentality and what they're trying to say, whether they're just trying to play it off or not, but their mentality seems to be in the right direction. So it's a positive for me.
Absolutely. I really like this team. And, I'm watching the team, a little more closely as we're coming down the stretch. Obviously we're waiting for the playoffs to start because in some respects, these games almost become meaningless. And it almost feels like this is like a month worth of exhibition games. And, it doesn't even matter. I mean, you want them to be playing good hockey. There's no question about it. But it's almost like, gee, we need the real season to start, But I'm looking at the team, right? I'll tell you that the first two lines, then you get to the third line, even the fourth line. I'm looking at this, Bertuzzi and Frederick there, and I'm looking at this team, and then defensively, very, very deep defensively. Now, if you can just hopefully Olmark is going to play like he played during the season. Man, this team is definitely built for the playoffs. Like you said, some of those additions that they made. So you have to feel happy with that. The front office is definitely done a good job building a team that's not just good for the regular season, because there is a difference in the hockey, as we pointed out, but built for the playoffs as well. That's the important part, and I think you're onto something there for sure.
And I agree with you, Paul, and I agree with you. That's what I think is going to be big for the Boston Celtics, the depth of their bench. And if Missoula knows how to play it, you have your starting five. Those guys we understand. It's when they need a rest, who's taking the place, and will that person be able to step up? That's what I want to see with this Celtics team come playoff. And that's where I think Brogdon and White become very, very important on the guard side. I want to know who steps up for Horford and Williams in that situation when those guys need a rest. Because when Robert Williams is in the game, the Celtics are a better team. When he's not in the game, now things change. And who's going to be the guys off the bench, the depth that help the Celtics against bigger teams when it's Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and down the stretch when they need it. So look for that to be very big for Missoula and the Celtics, the depth of that bench.
Well, you mentioned something earlier in this podcast where, the Celtics, they don't seem to be as good defensively as they were last year. So the question is it because of the coach? He's emphasizing more offense. Is that a part of the problem? And then Marcus Smart, he was the defensive player of the year. I don't think he's playing as good as he could on defense. He still tends to take, some shots that are not good looks in the clutch because he wants to hit the big shot. And then while that's going on, you got Brogdon and White sitting on the bench, and some observers say, well, Marcus Smart is such a time bomb waiting to blow up that, the coach really doesn't want to put him on the bench and say, hey, you know what? We're going to bring in Brogdon and try to hit a couple of big shots down the stretch because then he'll be irritated. I mean, he's, I'm not saying he's not a team guy. I don't know. I'm not in the locker room, but I've seen that before. Last year, Udoka did that. He put him on the bench one time down the stretch and he put somebody else in that was hot. Hey, do you want to win or is it about the individual? And I think that sometimes is an issue with a couple of the players on the Celtics.
It's possible, but, you can do it where, okay, you bring Brogdon in and you want offense. And let's say they score. And then if there's a timeout, well, you can stop and take him out and bring Smart in and have him play defense. And then you can rotate in that way. I've seen that happen a few times too. Or you just go by what you feel during the game and how it's looking and how he's playing, how he's feeling, what his attitude's like. The same thing with the guys off the bench, and what seems to be gelling and what's not gelling. And you're going to need it because, 5 guys can't play the whole game. It's just not going to happen. So they better make sure they have the rotation they want, and they play Celtics basketball is best when they move the basketball and they just don't play one-on-one isolation. If they play the way they're supposed to, they should be fine.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll send me a text and it's all capital letters because you're like, no, ISO ball and all this, and I can tell when you're getting irritated because instead of typing it in regular, regular letters, you put the capital letters. But, here's another example of something. It may be minor, but it's just, Tatum likes to do that slam dunk and hang on the rim. Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Hangs on the rim. Boom. He's hanging on the rim. And a lot of times he'll do that slam dunk and he'll just hang there. And he'll just hang there and he'll hang there. And he's hanging there 3 or 4 things back and forth. Oh boy. Wow. Pounding my chest. I'm hanging on the rim, So then the other night he was trying to do that. And he got hacked on the way up. And the guy there, I think they called a flagrant foul. I don't know if you're watching the game. But I'm watching the game and I'm like, he's trying to do that hang on the rim thing. You know what happened? He went up, he went to do the thing. The guy hit him. He went straight down like this, boom, from from the basket all the way down. I was thinking, gee, don't tell me he's going to be injured now because he wanted to, do this slam dunk with his. That's what I don't know what was in his head. Was he just going to do like the regular slam dunk? I think he wanted to hang on the rim to stick it to the other team. So for God's sakes, sometimes a layup you're open, you got a little layup, just put the layup. You don't have to be dangling on the basket. You know what I mean? And that almost cost him. I thought he was seriously injured, and he may be a little injured, but when he got up and was running around, I'm thinking, thank goodness, because I thought he was going to be, I thought he broke his hip or something. You know what I mean? Like, he came down hard to the floor. So, again, why do you have to do that, that showy stuff all the time? It's not really necessary. You know what I mean?
Okay, I don't think on that particular play ball, because Rudy Gobert was coming over, and Rudy Gobert's a big guy.
You don't think he was doing that?
I don't think he was ready to hang, because he went with one arm, and when he went up, Gobert went up, and it went in, and then he kind of undercut him, and so he kind of spun around, and then he went down and landed on his hip. And I don't know if it was going to be the hang and kind of go back and forth. It just seemed like it was too bang of a play for him to do that. But I have seen what you are talking about. Again, it's an energy thing. It's trying to get the crowd involved. A lot of guys do it, around the league. It's just kind of that showboat thing. And it's to say, hey, we're making an emphasis on this slam dunk and get the crowd involved. So he's lucky, you're right, because that injury looked like it could have been a lot worse.
Well, obviously, he's one of the best players in the league. I have to say that. I don't know if he's, he was the first team All-Star. I'm not sure that I agreed with that, to be honest. But, hey, there can be some disagreement on that. But he's one of the better, one of the top players in the league, and so on and so forth. So, hey, you can get the crowd going. You hang on the rim and all that. But it kind of reminds me of something funny. Remember when Cam Newton was on the Patriots? Not to compare Cam Newton to Jason Tatum, because one is one of the best players in the league, and Cam Newton, really turned out to be somebody that really had a lot of challenges and at the end of his career. But the Patriots are basically getting beat every other week, and he scores a touchdown and does the Superman thing. And I'm like, you're doing a Superman thing. It's the first quarter. The team stinks. You stink, and you're doing the Superman thing. You know what I mean? Now, Tatum is on a team that's a contender for a championship. He's an all-star, different situation. But, there are times where I think that can work if you're on a rally trying to get the crowd going and all that. But, again, I think, you can make the case, and a lot of people have criticized Tatum. He was more interested in getting the all-star MVP, than kind of getting this team on track to go win the championship. I think he will. I think they're still going to turn it around. I think they're going to turn it around and win some games down the stretch. But, there was a lot of attention to that all-star game. And I watched that all-star game. I thought it was a joke. I'm watching this thing. I'm like, this is freaking horrible, And, to stay in there for 40 minutes or whatever it was to win the MVP, so what? You know what I mean? That's not what we do here. We win. We go for championships in Boston. That's what we do. We don't care about all-star MVPs. We don't care about personal MVPs. We win championships in Boston. That's just the way it is.
Well, listen, I can't even remember the last time I watched an NBA All-Star game, because they don't play defense, and it means nothing to me. They just let you go by, and shoot when you want to shoot. So, to me, that means absolutely nothing. But for them, if they get more money for it, if they get, something to that, I think they have to change that style. They have to change that game. They have to make some kind of incentive where these guys actually play. So they have to come up with some kind of different design on how to do that, because to me, it's not entertaining. I know other people love it. I could care less for it. That game means nothing to me.
Yeah, even the NHL All-Star game is kind of, lost its luster. I mean, they tried to do this round robin thing, and I don't know. I was having trouble following it. I can remember when I first started as a fan, and people go, "Oh God, here goes the older guy thinking about the All-Star game." I think there was an All-Star game in either 1970 or 1971. The final score was 2-1.
Yep.
Like the East wanted to beat the West, the West wanted to beat East. I mean, 2-1. Can you imagine? Playing a game where you're basically playing a normal game, rather than what it turns into. But while we have a few minutes here, right? And again, jump in on any topic you want if you'd like. You see the number there at 774-762-6234. We started talking about the pitch clock a little bit. It seemed like you had some reservation about it. I don't know. I can tell you I went to a game down in Fort Myers, and I've been watching the games. But when I was at the game, I was really paying attention because they had this gigantic clock up on the wall there. And I'm looking at this clock, and, as soon as they got the ball, it was 14, 13, 12, boom, another. But now, like, some of the pitchers are trying to be wise guys, they're trying to quick pitch you and all this kind of to try to get around it. And then even the shift, they're taking the center fielder and putting the center fielder in short right, to try to get around that rule. I like it so far. I like it. I'm not saying I'm not open to, some criticism and all that, but are you more traditional on that? Do you have some reservations about, speeding the game up?
I like everything, Paul. I just don't like the quick pitch. I don't really care for that. If a batter steps out and puts 1 foot out, and the pitcher just sits there and gets in a stretch, and as soon as you put your foot in, you throw it. To me, that's a quick pitch. So, I don't know why the umpire just can't go and put his hand up, and then when the guy gets into the box, then point at him and then make the pitch. So, there's that's just my opinion. I just think you're playing mind games when you do that. So, maybe you could adjust the clock another couple of seconds. I mean, I'm not really sure, but I don't really care for that one specifically.
Yeah, I think the pitchers probably are thinking, well, we really don't like the fact that we have to throw the ball in 15 seconds.
Yep.
There's a lot of studies that show you wait a little bit and your arm doesn't get as tired, your arm lasts longer and stuff like that.
Right.
So they like to take their time in between pitches and all that. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of gamesmanship. Okay, what did he throw me last time? What's he going to throw me this time? You're kind of looking at him and all that, right? So by speeding that up, that changes that a little bit. But the rules are there for a reason, right? The fans want that, right?
Right.
So the players have to understand that this is what the fans want. The fans want this, right? And you don't want to ruin the game, because if you look at the audiences of baseball, we're talking about, my age, your age, and older. You know what I mean? Like, the younger kids are, it's not going quickly enough. The games last too long. And so we got to move it along, right? I think we have to adjust. Now, can changes be made after we do it? Yes, I think there ought to be something where the umpire says, hey, the spirit of the rules is what we say in the law, right? Here's the law, and here's the reason for the law, and here's the spirit of the law.
Right.
So we have these rules for a reason, not so you can go, okay, you're going to do that, I'm going to quick pitch you now,
Right. Yeah.
The defense, maybe they ought to make it an illegal defense. You got the three, you can put the 3 outfielders wherever you want, but not in the infield, okay? And as far as, the whole pitch clock thing, yeah, it's there for a reason, just to move the game along. And it was a spring training game, but the game that I saw, the pitcher and the batter did what you wanted them to do. We stepped out, we got ready, we stepped in, looked at the pitcher looked, and then was about 5 seconds left, he threw the ball. That was it. Nobody was trying to get around the rule or anything. So as long as everybody respects the game enough to follow the rules, that's what should happen. That people shouldn't be trying to find ways to needle you within the rule. You know what I mean? That's what I don't like.
No, I agree with you there. You don't have to nitpick when it comes to that stuff, Paul. You put a plan in place. You talk with all the teams. You talk with all the players and say, fellas, this is the way we're going with it. This is what we want to see. This is what's best for our game. And you hope they buy into it, and it works for you. And I think that's what they're trying to do, as well as trying to help the audience, whether it's score runs, less time to watch a game, all that kind of stuff. And if it works for you and it helps you and it helps attendance, that's what they want to see.
I know there's a lot of gamesmanship going on, between the batter and the pitcher. And that's what makes the game interesting, in between pitches. If you watch a game and you're just kind of not paying attention too much, you're not going to get much out of it. You get out of it what you put into it, right? And I'm guilty of that. The game's kind of on and I'm doing something else. But if you watch the game pitch by pitch, it's really, really fascinating. Okay, the guy's ahead. I mean, the difference between having a 2-1 count and a 1-2 count, can change an entire inning, which changes an entire game. Just that one at bat, what the count ended up in, things like that, and how long guys can be up there fouling the ball off and all this kind of stuff. But I think the traditional fan has to realize that there is a lot of time where nothing is happening. The batter steps out, he's looking around, he's fixing his glove, he's fixing the jog strap, he's doing all this stuff. And, it's like, geez, will you just get in there and throw the ball? I mean, so somewhere in there's got to be a happy medium.
Yeah, I think so. And probably that's what, the baseball commissioner is really trying to figure out and say, well, this is the negative part of it. This is the positive part of it. How do we meet it in the middle and figure out what's best for the hitter, what's best for the pitcher, what's best for our audience, what's best for our game. And you have committees, And this is what they're coming up with, and it's changing all the time. Now, people can say, well, wait a minute. Baseball's been around for years and years and years, and there was never issues. Well, why are you doing that now? Well, remember the development of games and balls and bats, hitters, all that is changing in the era. So they're trying to stay with the change of the eras.
I think it's attention spans. I think we're all, I don't know if I want to say guilty of it. I think we're just affected by the way things have changed, where the attention spans are shorter. So, a game that's 5 hours versus like 2.5, which I guess the average game was 2.5 as opposed to 3:10. Now that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Games at 7 o'clock, maybe by 9:30, it's like basketball and hockey. Basketball and hockey, one of the advantages is if you put, you're doing this, you're doing that, maybe you're watching something with the wife or something like that. Around 9:30, things are going to get interesting, right? Baseball, it's one of the things about baseball that makes it unique. It's not timed, right? So that does make it unique. As a bottom of the ninth, you could have a rally that goes on for half an hour. Great, that's different than these other sports where you're looking at the clock. But I think with the attention spans, with the way people are always, they're on their phone, they're doing emails, everybody's multitasking and all that, you got to just keep the thing moving. I just think that's unfortunately, unfortunately, however you look at it, things do change. And people like us, sometimes we don't like things to change because we like things the way they are. But the fact of the matter, they do change. And then you think of it from our parents' generation and the generation before that, things change. You just have to adapt. That's just, part of life, I think.
Hey, listen, I'll be the first to admit, I would probably say the last 10 years, unless the game is tied or really close, I've been leaving Red Sox games by the 7th to 8th inning. I have not stayed to complete a full game unless that game is 4-4 and it's something that's been a really good game. I'll be the first to admit, I have walked off, trying to beat the traffic because I'm looking at my watch going, wow, it's already 11 o'clock and it started at 7. And so and I've taken off, and I don't want to get home by 1:30. I want to get home by 12. And so I've done that for the last 10 years. Sometimes, it's a shame. And sometimes games have gone that long. It depends on what I've seen. Now, I will admit I might have missed an exciting ending, but maybe only once out of, all the games that I've been to, maybe one or two, but not too often. So I've made the right decisions on sometimes.
Well, I have this thing, right? I have this thing where if the Red Sox are losing 7-1 and it goes into the 9th inning, right? Everybody's leaving and nobody wants to stay. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but suppose this one time, right? They have one of the greatest comebacks of all time. Like they had that Mother's Day miracle a few years ago, like just one of those nights where just all this bizarre stuff happens, and I'm listening to it on the highway, right? I'm driving home. Does that ever happen to you? You leave. See, I won't leave. I unless somebody really forces me, I won't leave. I'll stay to the end just in case that one time this miracle comeback is going to happen. So have you ever left in the years that you've done this and you're coming down the highway, it's like, and you can hear as you're getting in your car, you can hear the crowd cheering. You're like, oh no, what did I miss? That's happened to you?
Maybe once, maybe twice in those 10 years, but not like you said, 7-1. It might have been like a 4-2 game and they pulled it off and hit a home run and won 5-4.
Really? 4-2? You're going to leave in a 4-2 game?
Yeah, I have. I've done it. I go by what the flow of the game is and what I see that I might be able to get out, and or maybe Daniel Bard's in the game and he's going to blow it, or something like that. I just go with kind of the flow. But for them to make a comeback and win it, I think it's happened maybe once or twice in the 10 years.
Well, before we go, you are a Celtics fan, right? That's your number one team, all right? And then in football, it's Dallas first. But then, okay, you're a Dallas fan, but we're talking New England sports and all that. Do you pull for New England when, just like in other random games?
Listen, if my Penguins are out, I will watch the Bruins and I'll root for them. I have no problem saying that. It doesn't mean that that's my team. I just, it's a local team. So it's somebody that I've gone and seen. So yeah, I'll root for them, but my team has to be out first. Celtics I deal with. Same thing. Right. I'm an Orioles fan, but
right.
I don't really. I mean, I can't go to Baltimore every week. That's why I try to get the Red Sox games and still watch baseball, because I don't fly to Baltimore all the time. I'll go once or twice a year, but that's about it. And so, that's how I kind of see it. And so when my teams are out, then I kind of just peek around, but not saying I'm not going to say they're my team, but I just watch the game.
Well, Nelson from Fall River gets joy out of seeing the Boston teams lose, and I know that's not you. If your team's out, you kind of pull for the Boston teams. But think about this, right? When you get a lot of joy, if the Bruins draw the Penguins,
Yeah,
and the Penguins knock them off in the first round, like
Yeah.
you're gonna like salivate over that possibility, aren't you?
I'm gonna like that, only because people know what kind of fan I am.
You're consistent.
And how long I've been with the Penguins, and they know that that's my team, and that's what it's all about. As much as, let's say, Nelson's a Giant fan, and his Eli Manning beat Tom Brady, he's going to rely on that in the back of his mind. At the same time, he's going to root for Daniel Jones.
All right, time to thank our sponsors. Again, John Seed, attorney at law, 156 8th Street in Fall River. You can check out his website at johnseedlaw.com. We have Lakeville Athletic Club, 325 Bedford Street in Lakeville, where you can play tennis and pickleball. We have Scotty's Pub, located at 202 Pleasant Street in Fall River, and Citywide Glass, with 3 locations to serve you at 425 State Road in Dartmouth, and they also have additional locations in Fall River and Taunton. Fun time to follow sports, that's for sure.
Oh, I mean, listen, Paul, even as we're talking, I'm getting more March Madness updates.
Oh, right.
Than I can handle. You watch that show? Did you see this? And this big upset, and I'm like, I can't answer right now because we're doing our show. But
do you have a bracket?
Oh yeah, of course. Everyone has a bracket. If you don't have a bracket, you don't know what you're doing. You got to have a bracket.
How's your bracket going so far?
I don't care if you know nothing about basketball. Just punch in numbers. Just put in names and say, hey, that guy Oral Roberts, he's a good guy. I'm going to take him. And you don't even know what the team is. But, that's the way I look at it. I was coaching, Paul, and I just got home. I haven't even had a chance to look at one score yet.
All right. But, hey, the night is young. It's only 7 o'clock.
That's correct.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your calls, Nelson from Fall River. We appreciate it. And thank you very much to our viewers. And we'll talk to you again soon. For Santos on Sports, we're just lucky we have the last. People ask me, are we related? We're not related. We just happen to have the last name. We just lucked out. I don't know who your great grandfather is. Maybe we're distantly related. I don't know.
Listen, if you want to say big brother, little brother, I'm all over. Sounds good to me.
All right, sounds good. All right, for Santos on Sports, I'm Paul Santos. For Chris Santos, we'll talk to you again soon.